This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Militants kill 14 soldiers and injure 7 in Burkina Faso attack. The UN says Libya's warring sides may be guilty of war crimes. And Tunisia's President Kais Saied says national dialogue to end the country's political crisis could take place soon. Hello and welcome to Africa Live, only on CGTN. From Nairobi, I'm Mahia Mutua. Also coming up, in business, Libya begins the construction of a fuel refinery worth $500 million. And in the sport, we delve into Cameroon's inroads into growing the profile of disability sport in the country. We start off the top of the hour in Burkina Faso, where militants have killed at least 14 soldiers and injured 7 in the country. The government says the attack took place on Monday in the northern town of Yirgu. Insurgents linked to both Al-Qaeda and ISIL operate in the region. No group has as yet claimed responsibility for the attack. The town of Yirgu was the scene of another militant attack in June, which left 15 police officers dead. Elsewhere, Boko Haram insurgents have taken over multiple communities in Nigeria's Niger state. This is according to a local government official and the state's Information Commission, who spoke to Reuters. They said that the insurgents are offering villagers money as well as recruiting them to join their ranks. The chairperson of the Shiroro local government area located in Niger state said the group was present in 8 out of 25 wards. Since 2009, the Nigerian government has been fighting the jihadist group. It has repeatedly claimed to have defeated the insurgency despite continued attacks. Well, let's get more on that story now. CGTN's Phil Ihaza joins us now from Abuja. Phil, what do we know at this time about the expansion of Boko Haram into north-central Nigeria?
Well, thank you. What we know at the moment is that quite a number of them have infiltrated the Shiroro local government area. It's a very big local government of Niger State, and that confirmation was by one of the local government officials of that, the chairman actually of the Shiroro local government area of the state. And he says that quite a number of them have actually gained entrance into the local government area. In fact, out of 25 wards, they've been able to spread their presence in 8 wards. That's quite a number, and he says that they are offering monies to indigent citizens there to get them into their ranks and file to increase or boost their force against the government. Of course, the government have also said that have debunked that rumor and said that they are actually curtailing their spread and they are dealing with them. But it's something that, of course, has brought a lot of worry, because if you look at Niger State, the capital, Mina, is just about 2 hours away from Abuja, and that tells you how close these militants may have gotten to, the citadel of power, if you say that, that's in Abuja. So, but we were talking to security officials. They say that, of course, that's understandably so because of the kind of onslaught that has been going on in the northeastern part of the country, in Borno, Adamawa, and Yobe, by the security operatives.
Right, and let me just bring in Seyi Adetayo at this time, security consultant and a retired officer who served in Nigeria's secret police. He joins us now from Lagos. Seyi, just how worrying are these reports of the expansion of Boko Haram in these regions?
Good afternoon. It's an interesting development, one that is not expected. If you look at the primary objective of the jihadi mission of this terrorist group, it has always been to occupy the whole of Nigeria, and starting from the northern part of the country. And frankly speaking, a terrorist group that have been able to sustain over 15 years of military, albeit, you know, the way they have been attacking, they've been able to sustain for that long. I think it is enough for them to have that confidence to say they've done well enough in the northeastern Nigeria, and then they can decide to now move further upward. This is not to say that they've not made incursion into the north central of Nigeria, but this seems to be the biggest ever that they've been able to achieve in recent time.
Right, and Phil, let me bring it back to you now. Why is it that the militant group has focused its attacks mostly on north central Nigeria?
Now, if you look at the fact that, I mean, with that report that they're moving to the north central part of the country, it's very, very clear. The north central part of the country has quite a number of ungoverned areas. In fact, there's a forest known as Rugu Forest that has been known to house a lot of these terrorist groups that have been, you know, attacking these regions. Most of the security onslaught that has gone on recently, as with regards to kidnapping, has also been in some parts of these forests. It borders Zamfara State, Kaduna, Katsina, and Niger State, and it's it stretches to beyond 220 kilometers. That's quite a vast area of land. You don't have a lot of settlements there. They're just bare, you know, land with a couple of vegetation and all of that. So these people think that actually that's a safe haven for them to pitch their tent. If you look at the northeastern part where they're coming from, they also left those kind of areas, Sambisa Forest, for example. But over the years, we've seen onslaught from the government, area bombardments, dislodge them from those places. In the southern part of the country, you won't find a lot of those stretches of ungoverned areas. A few of them, yes, but that's because there's quite a number of development scattered in different places. So it will be difficult for them to, you know, pitch their tents in those areas. That's one of the closest reasons why they may be going to the north central part of the country to perpetrate even more evil and gain more grounds.
Right, and finally, Say, back to you. How, looking ahead now, how will this impact ongoing counter-terrorism operations there?
Well, it's like we're just starting all over again. Like he said, Niger State is the largest state in Nigeria. It has the largest, I think, about 90-something thousand kilometers square kilometer expanse of land. And you know, for the group to have been able to pick Niger State, they are trying to create something similar to the kind of environment that they enjoy in Sambisa Forest. And we saw how many years it took Nigerian military forces to be able to, you know, eliminate or push this group out of Sambisa Forest and other parts of the northeast and the Lake Chad Basin that they are still unable to do. So it's like, you know, replaying what we've seen happen in the northeast. We shouldn't forget the fact that this group had tried initially to create an enclave for themselves around Kogi State, where Ansaru majorly operated and carried out a lot of deadly activities. But Kogi State did not provide them the much needed environment where they can easily spread and be able to expand like Niger State. And for some time now, we've seen, you know, there have been intelligence that bandits had been moved into the Tumbun enclave to be trained by Boko Haram. I think we just seen now the manifestation of the intelligence then, that there have been, you know, serious handshake where the leadership of Boko Haram have been training people. So now we can see clearly that the reason why the training was being carried out was for them to be able to see how such an environment can be developed into another large enclave where they can sustain many years and years of fightings and attacks against the Nigerian people. But the difference this time around is that the border the international border between Nigeria and the neighboring country around Niger Republic this time around is Benin Republic. How much of support Benin Republic or seriousness we can get from Benin Republic this time around to ensure that its own side of the Niger State borderline is not now used, to move in supplies and also for this terrorist group to Ibadan, because we discovered that most times when Sambisa Forest and other parts of Tubus become so hot, these guys move into the Niger Republic, they move into the Chadian border around the Lake Chad region, and that presents much difficulty for the Nigerian forces to be able to move into a foreign land. So we hope that this time around it will not be the same scenario.
All right, gentlemen, thank you very much for your insights on this story. CGTN's Phil Ihaza joining us live from Abuja, as well as Sei Adetayo, who's a security consultant joining us live there from Lagos. To Ethiopia now, where rebel group the Gumuz People's Democratic Movement, also known as the GPDM, has kidnapped over 140 civilians after heavy fighting with security forces in the Benishangul Gumuz region. Ethiopia's Human Rights Commission says the clashes have been raging between local security forces and the rebels since Sunday, displacing thousands of people. The commission says those displaced are likely to face dire humanitarian challenges unless they are assisted. The Benishangul Gumuz region hosts the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. The region has been blighted by armed attacks in recent years. In July, security forces in Ethiopia's western Benishangul Gumuz region neutralized more than 100 suspected rebels. Well, let's delve into this story further. CGTN's Girum Chala joins us live now from Addis Ababa for more. Girum, what more can you tell us at this time about the kidnappings? Well, we don't seem to be able to hear Girum there. We will come back to him a bit later on. Meanwhile, more than a dozen heads of state are said to have used offshore tax havens to hide assets worth hundreds of millions of dollars. That is, according to the Pandora papers, a new investigation by the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists, also known as the ICIJ. Jordan's King Abdullah II, former UK Prime Minister Tony Blair, Czech Republic Prime Minister Andrej Babiš, and Kenya's President Uhuru Kenyatta are among the politicians identified as beneficiaries of the secret accounts. CGTN's Daniel Arap Moi reports.
The Pandora Papers is a leak allegedly tying world leaders to secret stores of wealth. Kenya's President Uhuru Kenyatta and 6 members of his family have been linked to 13 offshore companies, with investments reportedly including a company with stocks and bonds worth $30 million. Kenyatta has, however, denied wrongdoing, saying the report will enhance financial transparency and openness in Kenya and globally. In response to the leak, the European Union Commission President Ursula von der Leyen says the EU must do more to combat tax evasion and aggressive tax planning. Von der Leyen has also condemned the practices brought to light in the huge data leak, which features former EU Commissioner and Maltese Minister John Daly.
Tax evasion and aggressive tax planning is completely unacceptable. And we have in the European Union some of the highest tax transparency standards in the world. But as we see, it's not enough. More work is needed. And that's why we will come forward with a proposal on the misuse of shell companies for tax purposes, and this will be done till the end of the year. So we'll come with an answer to the obvious problems that are still out there.
Meanwhile, the White House has also reacted to the recent leak.
Broadly speaking, the president is committed to bringing additional transparency to the United States, the U.S. and international financial systems, and you can see that in policies he's proposed and supported over the course of his presidency and even prior to that.
The Pandora Papers come 5 years after the 2016 leak known as the Panama Papers exposed how money was hidden by the wealthy in ways that law enforcement agencies could not detect. The Panama Papers triggered the resignation of the Prime Minister of Iceland and paved the way for the leader of Pakistan to be hosted. They were followed by the Paradise Papers in 2017 and FinCEN Files in 2020. Daniel Arap Moy, CGTN.
Well, let's take you back to our earlier story in Ethiopia, where rebel group the Gumuz People's Democratic Movement has kidnapped over 140 civilians after heavy fighting with security forces in the Benishangul Gumuz region. Well, we do have CGTN's Girum Chala now live with us for more. Girum, what more can you tell us about the kidnappings?
Well, the report you've been mentioning earlier from the Ethiopian Human Rights Commission suggests that it was in first week of September that the kidnapping of 145 people by the Gumuz rebel group happened, and most of them from the 145 are women, children, and elderly. The people from that surrounding, and again from the report, say that these people are gunmen from the Benishangul Gumuz regional state, and their reason for kidnapping is claiming that the people who are under their custody at the moment have not supported their notion, their idea, and also their motto of fightings that they are taking place at the moment. We know that these people are in their custody at the moment, but their situation is not really known at the moment. The government is saying that it is trying to get more information about the kidnapped people.
And Girum, of course, this isn't the first time that the region has been blighted by attacks in recent years. But what do we know about at this time about the group behind the kidnappings?
Well, this group, perhaps since recent times, is becoming more vocal when it comes to the idea of perhaps trying to secede the Benishangul regional state and also use armed force against the government and also people like the ones who have been kidnapped so that they can support the idea that they are just trying to transcend across that Benishangul regional state. These are armed groups. They are known by killings, kidnappings, and burning and looting of villages at the same time. So many reports we have done before can also suggest the same story that we're trying to tell. It is hard to get information from their side of the story, but the government tells you time and again that it's been handling lots of military missions through the defense force and the regional special militia force as well against this force, so that any threat that is posed against the people of that regional state can be stopped. But so far, I think the success rate should be very low, and the Ethiopian Human Rights Commission is calling on more work to be done, especially when it comes to securing that regional state and protecting the rights of the people and also keeping them away from harm, Amaya.
And finally, Girum, do we know at this time whether the government has responded to these latest developments and whether there have also been any efforts to secure the release of those kidnapped?
Well, a military source, a security source, told us that there were continuous missions since the kidnapping took place in the first week of September of these 145 people. By the way, because of the recent attacks from that rebel group, more than 5,000 people have also been evicted from the area. So the government has launched different attacks against these groups, also trying to recover the people who are kidnapped. The result of those missions are not known yet, Maya, and we know that the mission has continued. There is a standby force also in that regional state from the Ethiopian National Defense Force, and also a task force assigned to do this kind of job. We have to wait and hear from the Ethiopian National Defense Force and the government's official announcement of the results gained so far. Maya.
All right, Girum, great as always to speak to you. Thank you very much for that. CGTN's Girum Chala joining us live there from Addis Ababa. Turning to North Africa now, a UN investigation is reporting that both sides in Libya's conflict may have committed war crimes. The report was published by an independent fact-finding mission commissioned by the UN Human Rights Council. Asta Tal has more.
The independent fact-finding mission looked at crimes potentially committed in Libya since the 2016 conflict. Its report highlighted likely war crimes and crimes against humanity. According to the mission, all parties to the conflict may have committed these crimes.
Our report also documents the recruitment and direct participation of children in hostilities, the enforced disappearance and extrajudicial killings of prominent women, and continuing sexual and other forms of violence against vulnerable populations, including LGBTQI persons.
The fact-finding mission was created by the UN Human Rights Council in 2020. They published their findings after reviewing documents and interviewing over 150 people.
We paid particular attention to the allegations of atrocity crimes committed in the town of Tarhuna, to the southeast of Tripoli, between 2016 and 2020. We were able to document the existence of mass graves in Tarhuna.
The mission also raised the alarm over the welfare of migrants in detention centers. Libya has become a popular route for sub-Saharan African migrants and refugees looking to reach Europe.
Our investigations also indicated that migrants, asylum seekers, and refugees are subjected to a litany of abuses at sea, in detention centers, and at the hands of traffickers. Violations against migrants are committed on a widespread scale by state and non-state actors with a high level of organization and with encouragement of the state. All of this is suggestive of crimes against humanity.
Bayani also shared his concerns over reports of the continued presence of foreign fighters in Libya. The mission's report also identified foreign actors who may have committed war crimes. Astatal, CGTN.
Right, well, CGTN's Adel Mahroui is in Cairo and has been following up this story for us. He joins us live now with more details on this story. Adel, what kind of reaction has come out of Libya and indeed the wider region to this report?
So officially, there hasn't been any significant stance from Libya. Everyone is monitoring the investigations that are ongoing. They're waiting for the October 7 brief of that committee to UNHCR, where more details are expected. But when we look at the details, the report is basically saying there is no sort or type of atrocity that has not taken place in Libya. Moreover, it says that these violations and possible human wars against humanity and war crimes, they have been not only conducted by both rival parties or rival factions in Libya, but also third parties like states and other armed groups involved in the conflict. Non-Libyan nationals are also, but no one has pointed fingers at a specific identity, a character, a person, a leader, or a group. So until this happens, most probably what will happen in Libya is that everyone will be looking the other way, as if no one is pointing finger at his group, tribe, city, or faction. And or when the announcement is made, when there are clear accusations made, we can see stronger reactions even from the government, which the report also hinted it can be involved in some of these violations.
And of course, there will be more reactions coming out of this report. But what can you tell us, Adel, about the significance of this report?
So the report confirms the on war crimes and crimes. This is have mass graves. We have violations to extreme thoughts that could come to human that happen to Libyans, to women, to everyone. And it has been going on until recently. According to the report, it has been the evidence that they've seen and the interviews they've made show that until the civil war was at its peak, this was still going on. Now, this have a strong influence over the political scene. Mahia, when we have some group or faction that are strong in Libya, that are armed in Libya, and now they are publicly and officially accused of these wars, will they allow Libya to move peacefully into an organized state and put themselves at jeopardy of being arrested and put to trial and maybe is highly unlikely. The report also stresses that the Libya's judicial authority its hands are tight and it cannot really follow all the legal and proper process that should see whoever violated the perpetrators held accountable. So all of this raises concern about the stability in Libya, the future of the political process, now that the UN officially is saying there are people inside Libya who are responsible for war crimes. What is the future of these people and how influential are they at this moment will definitely have an impact on the political process, elections coming and the months that will follow.
All right, CGTN's Adel Mahroui joining us live there from Cairo with the latest from the situation in Libya and the significance of that report. Well, it's time for us to take a short break here on Africa Live. Here's what's coming up. Tunisia's President Kais Saied says national dialogue to help end the country's political crisis could take place soon. And Abiy Ahmed pledges to unite Ethiopians as he's sworn in to begin a new 5-year term as Prime Minister.
Africa is a continent of diversity, with varied climates and enchanting geography, and a people so distinct, but with a shared enduring spirit. We are at the heart of the continent to bring you the untold stories.
Let's have a look.
We celebrate Africa as it shapes its own destiny.
Tunis, Cairo, Juba, Ethiopia, Tanzania.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back and thank you for staying with us on Africa Live. We turn to Tunisia now, where President Kais Saied says a national dialogue seeking to end the country's political crisis will take place soon. This is according to a statement released by the French presidency following a phone conversation between President Saied and French President Emmanuel Macron. Here is Adnan Shawashi with the details.
Several political parties and civil society organizations have expressed support for the National Dialogue Initiative led by President Saied.
We support this decision and the measurement taken by the President of the Republic, Mr. Kais Saied, because we also called for that even before the 25th of July. Today, maybe the President has some difficulties in the communication part of his work today, but we can understand that, because maybe he has some problems with some political party.
The opposition has, however, criticized the head of state's monopoly of powers. Many politicians say Kais Saied is relying on foreign support to impose his rule and his one-sided vision of the process of national dialogue.
We reject any form of foreign interference in Tunisian affairs. However, the president has opened the door for foreign states to interfere. He is meeting foreign ministers of foreign countries and their parliamentary delegations to explain his moves and the current situation, while he refuses to meet all his Tunisian supporters and opponents. This is not the right approach to starting a national dialogue.
Political analysts assert that Tunisia needs a national dialogue to end the current crisis. However, this initiative needs to involve all political parties, civil society organizations, as well as labor unions, national figures, and constitutional law experts.
Many Tunisian parties and national organizations have been calling for national dialogue, but they have learnt about the project in the communique of the Élysée instead of the Tunisian presidency. The president discussed this issue with French President Macron. This is the second time that Tunisians learn about internal politics through the French presidency. This is unacceptable for Tunisia's sovereignty.
Analysts maintain that the Tunisian president brushed aside much of the 2014 constitution. Kais Saied has also given himself powers to legislate by decree. Saied also appointed a new prime minister and said he will form a committee to amend the constitution.
More than 90 frozen MPs have signed a petition calling for the resumption of the activities of the House of the People's Representatives. President Saied suspended parliament and lifted MPs' immunity in July. Experts assert that these decisions are against any political dialogue initiative in the country. Adnan Shawashi, CGTN, Tunis.
Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has been sworn in for a new 5-year term. Ahmed has promised to protect Ethiopia from foreign interference amid global criticism over the war in the northern region of Tigray. He also warned that his country will not accept foreign interference in its internal affairs. The Prime Minister is also calling for unity to make Ethiopia a great nation. Ahmed's party scored a landslide victory in June's election, cementing his power domestically, despite international concern over his government's handling of the conflict in the Tigray region.
We should realize that the political and economic problems that accumulated over the years cannot be solved by the leadership and solutions provided by one party alone. So we shall rise to work together hand in hand. Although the 6th national election couldn't be said to be free from all blemishes and as successful as we had desired it would be, it has opened up a new chapter to actualize the dream of establishing and sustaining a democratic system, which had been the question for a long time. It has opened up a new chapter and made us move one step forward.
Further afield now, Japan has formally elected a new Prime Minister, Fumio Kishida. He is known as a moderate politician and a consensus builder. But the influence of heavyweights within the Liberal Democratic Party may continue to sway policy direction. Phoebe Amoroso has more now from Tokyo.
Fumio Kishida has become the 100th Prime Minister of Japan. He takes over as the country emerges from a COVID-19 state of emergency for the first time since early April. Approval for the previous administration fell to a record low on its handling of the pandemic, and Kishida faces the challenge of winning back public trust.
Under my cabinet, first of all, I will do utmost to take measures against COVID-19, which is an urgent and top priority issue. We will carefully explain to the citizens so they have a sense of understanding, and we will always be ready to respond to the worst-case scenario.
Serving as a foreign minister for nearly 5 years, Kishida is a familiar face to many overseas.
While Japan has a new leader, many argue that the influence of former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe remains strong. The question now is, to what extent will Kishida continue the same policies?
For 20 cabinet positions, Kishida has unusually selected 13 fresh faces, but the other 7 are allies of Abe and outgoing Finance Minister Taro Aso. Some analysts say this may mean little change in Japan's approach to the economy and to foreign policy.
Kishida has tapped Kishinobu to stay on as defense minister. Kishinobu is, of course, the brother of Shinzo Abe. And Kishi has been very vocal on issues related to Taiwan. And so that could be a potential area of tensions between Japan and China going forward.
In his first speech as Prime Minister, Kishida reiterated that he sought dialogue with China, but that difficult discussions were needed.
China is an important country and dialogue must continue. However, on the other hand, in the East China Sea, the South China Sea, and various other regions, there are movements that can be said to be changing the status quo by force. That may run counter with respect to the values we value, such as freedom, democracy, the rule of law, and human rights. And in this respect, we have to say what we have to say.
First, however, Kishida will be focused on leading the Liberal Democratic Party through a general election on October the 31st, as the term for Japan's lower house comes to an end. He's aiming to gain back public support to give him a strong mandate to lead for the next few years. Phoebe Amoroso, CGTN, Tokyo.
Well, just before we get into the business, the multi-trillion-dollar infrastructure Belt and Road Initiative of China, which is targeted at networking the whole of Africa and then to East Asia and Europe, is beginning to attract rival interest from the G7 countries, namely Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, the United Kingdom, and the United States. They plan to offer other nations that want to improve their infrastructure an alternative to partnering with China. Our correspondent Phil Ihaza in Abuja, Nigeria's capital, sat down with Olawale Arashid, the CEO of African Railway Consulting Limited and the director of the African Rail Roundtable, to discuss the progress and impact of China's Belt and Road Initiative.
My first question, sir, will be for the benefit of doubt. Why does Africa, and especially Nigeria, require a massive rail and road network?
Africa is largely underdeveloped, and secondly, the infrastructural deficit is so high. So we need rail, road, and the hard infrastructure. One, to interconnect the landlocked countries, because if you don't interconnect them, then trading will be so low, prosperity will be so low. Then we also need to connect the capital cities together. And three, we need to improve on inter and intra-African trade. And so as for Nigeria, you see, Nigeria is the biggest economy on the continent. So by the time you connect north to south, not just through road, which is difficult to maintain, but through rail, and you connect east to west, you are indirectly expanding Nigerian influence economically.
Okay, so currently, where are we with the plans to connect the states in Nigeria and, of course, the country to the rest parts of the continent?
For Nigeria, I think the current government has done marvelously well, especially in terms of rail and even road. Major rail projects have been handled, but I think the government still have it in mind to interconnect around 10 states, I think. As to the continental level, almost all African governments now, across the regional blocks, have one railway project or the other. In fact, there is a silent railway revolution across Africa.
So at the moment, there are quite a number of initiatives proposed by the U.S., the U.K. and EU, which seem to rival the BRI and China, projects in Africa. Do you think these initiatives are realistic?
Competing with BRI is also good for Africa, where the fine bright, let's East and West bring resources to develop Africa, because when you develop Africa, you develop the world. But as to comparing the two, I think BRI has a lot of advantage over the new plan. For one, the new plan being developed by G7 is still in the pipeline. They have to sort out the funding question. Where would the funding come from? They have to sort out the implementation framework, which is still ongoing. And any true friend of Africa now should know that what we need is bridges, roads, ports, power plants, ICT, infrastructure, and all those.
So my last question will be, there are a couple of claims that the projects or interest from China in Nigeria, in countries in Africa, and of course the continent, they lack accountability and transparency, and they're plunging these countries or the continent into huge debts. What are your thoughts about that?
Yes, my take about it, in three ways. The first one is you have to look at the geopolitical questions across the world. So of course, China and the West, the rivalry. So you are likely to have issue of one acquisition after the other against China. Second one is at national level, you have political questions. People have issues with current government. So definitely you play politics with infrastructure. That is, but the last one I have is this: are we truly in debt crisis? The loans are tied to projects, and we can see Lagos, Ibadan, SGR have boarded it. And to be fair, it's a fantastic job. Any funding that we invested on infrastructure is worth it, because one, it will boost the economy, and of course it will pay itself off eventually.
Thank you so much, sir, for doing this interview. We appreciate your insights.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a privilege talking to CGTN. We thank you.
All right, and here's what's coming up in the business. Libya begins construction of a fuel refinery worth $500 million. And Egypt's state-owned banks launch $63 million fund.
taken me completely out of my depth, but at the same time, it's exciting. It's new, it's different, it's a challenge.
It's really exciting.
Right, well, it's time for the business. Libya on Sunday said work has begun on the construction of an oil refinery in the south of the country. The project will cost between $500 and $600 million. According to the head of Libya's state oil company, Mustafa Sanala, the refinery should be operational within 3 years. Mustafa also said an additional income of $75 million will be expected from the project. The project was first announced in the early 1980s. It had been put on hold for years before being revived in 2017.
We hope this project will be beneficial and will encourage people in the south to stay in their lands instead of moving to the cities, making a reverse migration. This project should not be used by smugglers, since smuggling left a lot of bad impact on Libya. It's the responsibility of everybody, especially the local residents in the south, to take care of this project and preserve it.
A trio of Egypt's state-owned banks have launched a 1 billion Egyptian pounds fund, equivalent to $65 million, to support fintech startups. The creation of the fund follows the recent adoption of a new law by Egypt's parliament to develop its financial technology sector, with an aim of driving financial inclusion and cementing the country as one of the region's fintech centers. CGTN's Yasser Hakim now reports.
It's a shot in the arm for Egypt's startup ecosystem. The 1 billion Egyptian pounds, which is an equivalent of $65 million, is meant to target emerging fintech startups, and especially those that are in the initial stages. The fund is being established by the National Bank of Egypt, Bank Misr and Bank du Caire, under the watch of the central bank, and will support both local fintech startups and international outfits that want to establish themselves in the Egyptian market.
These startups face many issues, especially with financing their projects, plus other complications. The fund will help these companies grow. The banks have strong liquidity to pour more than the 1 billion Egyptian pounds. The youth have many innovative ideas in digital solutions that we have to make good use of, and this fund will help in this purpose.
There are a couple of success stories, such as Fawri e-payments, which became the first unicorn in the North African country, but experts believe there's potential for much more.
The impact of this fund will be big. It will nurture the talent we have. For instance, a country like India, where the youth work in software and financial technology, they export billions of dollars from this sector and rake in huge revenue. We have qualified, well-educated youth. Their talent is big, but unfortunately, they don't find the proper climate or tools to develop their services and products that allows them to take off. The fund will provide them with the suitable environment to produce innovative applications in this field.
Besides the fintech fund, the Central Bank of Egypt has amended regulations to attract Egyptians into the financial sector. Anyone can now open e-wallets, transfer cash through their mobiles, and sell products via contactless smartphone payments.
2 months ago, if you wanted to withdraw cash, you had to go to the bank or an ATM machine with your Visa card. Now, any point of sale in any kiosk can do the same service. There are about 500,000 point of sale terminals, and they're increasing. What do people want? Speed, ease of transactions, high security, and less costs. All this is provided by fintech and financial services.
The adoption of the new laws is expected to boost financial inclusion in the wider population, a key driver of investor interest in the fintech industry.
These efforts are meant to achieve financial inclusion. We have about 40 to 50 million youth who use the internet but don't have bank accounts. Financial technology puts them under the state's digital umbrella. Inclusion means everyone will have an account, if not a bank account. They'll have an account through a mobile application that will eventually lead them to open a bank account.
The central bank says through such initiatives, it hopes to transform Egypt into a regional hub for the financial technology industry. Yasser Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
Meanwhile, the United States says that it will soon have frank conversations with China on trade. In a speech at a Washington-based think tank, U.S. Trade Representative Catherine Tai says the point of the negotiations is, quote, not to inflame trade tensions with China. Nathan King has more now from Washington.
After a months-long review of U.S. China trade policy, the Biden administration's new trade policy towards Beijing seems a lot like the last policy. Tariffs of up to 25% on $360 billion worth of Chinese imports will stay, at least for now, but U.S. businesses that depend on Chinese parts will be able to apply for wider exemptions.
We will start a targeted tariff exclusion process. We will ensure that the existing enforcement structure optimally serves our economic interests. We will keep open the potential for additional exclusion processes as warranted.
What is new is that talks will resume, though no date was given, and that the Biden administration says it will push China to deliver on its purchases and other commitments under the Phase 1 trade deal.
But our analysis indicates that while commitments in certain areas have been met, that certain business interests have seen benefits, there have also been shortfalls in others. But the reality is, this agreement did not meaningfully address the fundamental concerns that we have with China's trade practices.
Tai also said that the US will challenge China on its state support for industries, specifically for semiconductors and artificial intelligence and other industries of the future. This comes as Washington is poised to step up state support for the very same industries. Unlike the Trump administration, Tai said her team will focus on bringing more allies into the process, even though partners in the European Union, like France and Germany, have very different trade policies towards Beijing and are not part of the Phase 1 trade deal. Also, the US Trade Representative did not mention COVID and the obvious disruption it had on the trade agreement. For its part, China has always maintained that for trade relations to improve, then tariffs should be lifted first, especially now as the global economy is struggling to recover from the pandemic and price rises create inflationary pressures, and also there are pressures on global supply chains. The silver lining of these announcements from the US Trade Representative, however, is that it looks like discussions, if not negotiations, will resume with their Chinese counterparts soon. That could help improve the climate of relations between the two countries. Nathan King, CGTN, Washington.
And here's what's coming up on Africa Live Sport. We delve into Cameroon's inroads into growing the profile of disability sport in the country.
How would you create your legend? On the fields, on the tracks, in the arenas of Africa. Were you born to be a player?